This week, we welcome Jason Loomis, Chief Information Security at Freshworks, to discuss why companies should be hiring CISOs for their leadership talent, not their technical talent. In the leadership and communication section, is your board cyber ready? Chief Security Officer's salary growth is slowing. The secrets to making difficult decisions and more. I am tongue-tied today, but Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Broadcasting live, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. $270. That's the average number of times a company comes under cyber attack each year. And the average cost of a successful data breach is $4.35 million. Cygnus ensures your internal and external teams are securely connected, confident, in control, and compliant during a cyber crisis. Visit securityweekly.com/Cygnus to learn more. That's CYGNVS. If your organization is ready to embrace edge computing, we have good news. The 2023 AT&T Cybersecurity Insights Report provides everything you need to know to get started. In the report, we identify the common characteristics of edge computing. We found edge use cases are rapidly coming online, and we reveal how to secure edge computing. Most importantly, you'll learn how to prepare for your edge ecosystem. Get your complimentary copy of the report today by visiting securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity. That's securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 324, recorded October 16th, 2023. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me today are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque, who does not want to talk about football, by the way.
Oh, my Lord. What a weekend. I mean, the Browns beat the Niners. Jets beat the Eagles. Dolphins beat the Chiefs. Or the Chiefs actually, Dolphins beat the Chiefs, right? Is that how it went? But then Denver and the Pats are still uber struggling. It's absolutely crazy. Crazy weekend.
Yeah. Yes, it was a crazy weekend. But the Rangers beat the Astros last night in Game 1. So this is the battle of Texas and baseball going on. So that's going to be.
Are we going to switch to baseball commentary now?
I hope not.
Let's hope not. Also joining, that voice you heard in the background, Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome, Ben.
Hello, Matt. Jason, good to be with you guys again this fine Monday. How's it going?
It's cooling down in northern Texas, dude. It was like 49 degrees this morning when we got up. It was chilly. It was good.
Same thing here.
You have New England weather.
Yes, I'll take it for a little bit.
Rain.
Yeah, that's true. We do need more rain. Security Weekly listeners, we are celebrating the milestone of reaching over 1,000 members of our CISO community. The Cybersecurity Collaboration Forum is a one-stop shop for executive collaboration comprised of CISOs across various industries. If you want to be part of this growing community of CISOs, join us as a member or technology partner. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity collaboration. Jason Loomis is the Chief Information Security Officer for Freshworks. Freshworks is a global provider of SaaS customer engagement solutions for IT, customer service, sales, marketers, and HR. Jason, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Hello, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So thank you for joining us last minute. We had a last minute cancellation. And as I was saying before the show, if you didn't join us today, we were going to talk about the leadership and communication challenges of football and do a Monday kind of quarterback session. But instead, we're going to talk about why companies should hire CISOs for their leadership talent, not their technical talent, which is something we talk about every week on this podcast. We believe that the leadership and communication skills are vital to the CISO role, especially as they continue to try to get a seat at the table, as we would say. So Jason, give us a little background into this topic and why it was something so interesting to you as well.
Yeah, it is. It's near and dear to my heart. Part of how I lead my teams too. This is, to me, the most important aspect of, technology is known as, we say, it's these three things you have to put together to run any kind of technology, let alone security. It's made up of people, process, and technology. And by far, by leaps and bounds, by far, people is the hardest part of that equation because of the variability and just being human. It ain't easy. Technology is easy. You read the manual, you got it. Process, easy. Just go copy someone else's. I'm not saying do that, but yeah, it's definitely the hardest. So it's something that's I'm passionate about, and for not just CISOs, but really across the org. So if you think of succession planning, you don't just suddenly one day wake up and you become a CISO. So even for succession planning, when I'm hiring my leadership team or I'm elevating current team members into that role, the technology, honestly, is typically the last thing you think about.
But it's so interesting because if we think about where we came from, right? Because I remember the early days. I've been doing this since '96, right? We were part of the IT organization, very technology focused. Even our technology stack doesn't think about the people element that much either. And it's interesting because the company I currently work for around human risk management is, we know that the human is what causes 74% of all the breaches, but we don't spend a lot of time solving the human problem. And again, it's a very hard problem. And it is for the CISO as well, because it's not just the people problem of managing people, talking to people, communicating across the teams. It's also securing the people. So people kind of gets a double whack here in the way we've traditionally thought about some of these roles.
Yeah, it's you can see it when you go to cybersecurity conferences. It's that exact, just how you said it. If you look at you go to these huge floors at RSA or Black Hat, the floors are the size of a football stadium or a couple of football stadiums, and you just look at these booths of vendor after vendor after vendor. You can throw a rock and you'll hit one that's a new technology, right? How many are you going to throw that are maybe, first security awareness or people, like how do I upskill my people? Maybe 1 out of 30, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30. And those are just, guess what? They're a software solution to teach you how to upskill or train your people. It's, hey, here's some computer training. Here's some really cool anime. If you go into anything with like, hey, how do I get my people to be better leaders, either with their own team or across the organization, there's nothing there for that.
Right. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. Oh,
dramatic
sorry.
pause.
Yeah, no, I got a quick pause on my side, so I missed the last part of that. But you're right. We focus very little on people. So as you think about hiring for leadership talent, what are the things we talk about the hiring process a lot on this show? Like, what do you look for in some of these roles? Not only the security roles, but as your CISO roles. Like, what are the skill sets organizations should be looking for in their CISO?
Well, first off, when I think about when you say when you're looking, and this struck me as I was jotting down ideas to talk to you about this, and I realized this is a big one, is look at resumes. There's nowhere in the resume that you're going to see a CISO's leadership or these skills that we're about to talk about what I look for when I hire and what people should be looking for when they hire a CISO. I guarantee that's nowhere to be found on the resume, or at least it's not highlighted. You might have something that says, hey, I'm a really good communicator, or, leadership and organizational development skills. But everything else is going to be, what you successfully implemented across the organization. I don't think people are going to put on their resume that, hey, I'm a really good, communicator with the team, and here's some of the frameworks that I implement when it comes to CISO leadership. So the first part is like hiring for that. I think that's, you kind of try to determine that in the interview process. And I don't have a solution or a solve for this, but if there's some way that you can find it on a resume, would be great. For example, I recently am about to lose a deputy chief information security officer, which is, a very key role that has to have a lot of the skill sets a CISO does. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to go find this talent that I want. And for me, it's the people skills are the most important. Can they tell a good story? Can they communicate? Can they show empathy? How do they lead teams? Do they look at it as an autocracy where they're just making the decisions? Or is it, the way that I work in my teams is I'm not the only one making the decision. I have a room full of people, and it's an organizational decision-making process. Is that how this, deputy CISO is going to approach it? I don't know how I'm going to be able to filter for that on a resume, or even tell my recruiters, hey, go look for this Simon Sinek / type person that understands these concepts. And it's a challenge. So.
No, I mean, that's a great point, Jason. A lot of the things that I look for, whether it's in the resume or in the interview process, is, show me how you've been able to collaborate and influence across the business, right? Show me how you've been able to take a difficult situation and turn it into something positive and a positive outcome for the organization. Having that broad business focused perspective on how they can take multiple business units and bring them together, and maybe talk about competing priorities or competing risks, or how they can take that influence and the ability to collaborate and make positive outcomes for the entirety of their business. That's becoming a leader within the organization, right? I mean, on the show, I've talked about it a lot, where I think all three of the co-hosts here have gone through it. We've built houses. Well, when I hired the architect to build my house, I really didn't care what tools they were using. That's the technology, right? They're going to go off and hire people who have the right tools. They're going to pick the right tools. If you're going to use a nail gun or a hammer, that's up to you from your business strategy and what you want to use. And you can influence what's best to use. But from my perspective, it's about that architecture, that strategy. So, looking for those strategic folks who have the mindset around collaboration, influence, knowing the business, and being able to really sit down and have tough conversations and negotiate with business units is huge.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, one of the best stories I like. So I do a lot of case study. I take a case study approach to when I work on building leadership with my team. In fact, the first thing I do with my team is I don't go over technology. I go over team building. Is, hey, how are we gonna make decisions as a team? How are we going to work together to increase the spread of the cybersecurity program or get a mature cybersecurity program? And one of the best case studies I liked is the Kennedy with the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and specifically around during the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you're familiar with the history, it's a bunch of missiles were parked off Cuba back in the 60s. Yeah, back in the 60s, and tense 13 days of negotiation with Cuba, and Russia was involved, where Kennedy had to make these really critical decisions, and he reached out to the former president Dwight Eisenhower, who is a unique case study because when he was chosen in 1943 as Supreme Allied Commander, I think, of both British and European and American forces, he wasn't chosen because he was a great military strategist. There were so many other British and American commanders that had that skill set. He was pulled together because he could pull a team together with strong personalities, listen to diverse viewpoints, build commitment and shared understanding. So it was literally his leadership skills that made him Supreme Allied Commander, not because he was the best technical at his job, because, I went and won this battle or this tank battle or they had this strategy. It was really how good of a leader he was at getting teams together to make decisions. And, that was one of the things he focused on with Kennedy when he talked to him about when he first questions out of Kennedy that he asked when Kennedy said, hey, I could use your help in making some decisions here. He said his first question wasn't about tactical strategy or military strategy or tactics. It was, how are your teams making these decisions? Tell me what you're doing in a team environment to come to this, to figure out what to do. And that was his whole focus. So it just shows, again, the importance of how much that people skills when you get to this level. Just think of CFOs. I guarantee my CFO wasn't hired because he can calculate weighted average cost of capital the fastest or came up with some new formula for Black-Scholes options. It's because they're leaders, especially at that level. And that's what the CISO level is equivalent to these days. You're a C-level executive. You may not be able to go in and do the calculations of the spreadsheet anymore, but you're able to get the company in the right direction.
Absolutely. Ben, did you have a question in there? I saw your chat quickly. I want to give you a chance to pop in here real quick. Maybe Ben's out. All right. I want to. Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, I was muted. I was having some trouble with the audio there, Matt. So yeah, I was muted for a second. But I was just thinking that as we look at hiring for these people, like that's not what we're typically seeing though, right? When we look at roles that are posted and we look at the way people search, and I'm wondering how we get that to change. Like, how do we push that forward where when we're looking for leaders, whether it's CISOs or whether it's leaders down level, how do we get that to be more insightful, and especially in the recruiting side of it when we're sourcing for these positions? Because I don't think that's typically considered. I think it's heavily weighted on the tech side.
Yeah, I think Jason, I was thinking this when Jason gave his commentary. The other Jason, I'm not talking about myself in the first person. He said here, what problems have you faced? When have you had to overcome a challenge? These are typically interview questions. So if there's a way to flush an interview question into a line or in your resume, and it literally got me to thinking, I need to put something like that in my resume. I'm not looking, by the way, I'm very happy where I am, but put that in there to show that I accomplished that, those high level organizational, because right now it's all about, I built a vulnerability management program in 30 days, or I saved this much money off cost, and it's just all tech and revenue and numbers driven versus that type of statement. That's something the individual can do on their resume to increase that visibility. But for recruiters, I don't know, but I would, I'm going to be challenged with this. So I'm going to ask them to look for that and to somehow intuitively get a sense that this person would focus more on the people than the process and technology. If it's all technology and all they've done is engineering and haven't, how long have they been in a leadership and how big of a leadership team? Is there anything about cross-functionality? Is it just them leading their team and they report to one person? Or do they highlight in their resume how they've had to work across departments and with different members across the organization? I think the level of reporting speaks a lot too. So the higher up you report, the more likely it is that you're going to have those skill sets. So the more likely that I'd find a candidate that would have those skill sets, if that makes sense.
I mean, here's a question for you guys, and I'd love to get your thought, right? Because I think as leaders, I think there's a couple of problems. Number one, the way HR teams are building these job descriptions for when they're hiring and the criteria for how they hire. But the other side of the coin is, shouldn't we as leaders be modeling the way? My resume states how I helped build 14 million in revenue a quarter for one of my organizations, right? Help drive revenue, help create operational efficiencies, help collaborate across business units. So, shouldn't we be modeling the way in actually putting those in our resumes so that way these hiring managers, leaders, HR leaders can see the true capabilities of what we can be doing for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. If we weren't virtual, I would high five you right now. And I'll own that. I'll start with my resume. I'll come out of this. I give you everybody on this call a promise. And again, I'm not looking, but I'll have it ready. The next 4 days, I'm going to have a section just like that in my resume for my job is something that is an organizational success that I had that was driven by the people part of what we do, not the, increase 30 million in revenue or reduce cost by 7%.
Love it.
I think the other thing we can do, right, is take a video interview or a video presentation and use that to understand communication skills, right? I've got a ton of videos online. This is episode 324. I've done keynotes in Abu Dhabi and Singapore. Like, one way to validate communication skills is actually just point to a video that's already online. And in our resumes, we could actually do that. Say, this is how I presented on this topic. You want to see how I communicate and how I'm able to tell a story and communicate with a broader audience? Here's an example. And on the other flip side of that, maybe that's one of the criteria we should see up front early in the resume from candidates, so we could gauge their communication, their soft skills before we even go down the path.
I completely agree. Are we going to agree this whole call? Ugh, how boring. I completely agree. Yes. And if you don't, here's tips for people that don't. I bet you there's a lot of people that want to be CISOs right now that heard you say that are like, I got to be on camera. I have to. It is, it's not natural. It can be scary, but here's my tips. Start your own video blog, start a podcast, start getting used to it. Do it just for fun. Toastmasters is a great nonprofit association where you can go learn public speaking. They're fantastic and very supportive. And you can go once a month, once every couple months. Look for your own in your area is another great way to start. But yes, your stage presence, is a good way of saying it. Your stage presence. How do you carry yourself off in front of a large group of people or even virtually? And how can you communicate an idea or thought verbally to people and in person is absolutely it's not just a critical need for a CISO, but it's going to make you way more successful in your career.
Yeah, and we have all the tools sitting right in front of us. We have these cameras. We're on them all day for Zoom. Record a little video and post it, and then make it public so people see.
All the kids nowadays, the kids in 20 years from now, they're going to be kick-ass CISOs because they're on TikTok every day. They're doing videos. They're doing selfies. They're like a video generation. So we're not going to have this problem in 20 years. So maybe that's the thing. I just got to wait 20 years to hire when one of these 8-year-olds, when they're 28, they'll be the perfect CISO.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't wait that long, and that's assuming we can even convince them to come into the cybersecurity industry, which is a whole separate topic. Yeah. So, Jason, some of the other tips, right? We talked a little bit. Jason Albuquerque brought some of this up. Hiring practices as leaders. How do we also help inform HR on what we're actually looking for? You're getting ready to hire a deputy CISO. How do we get HR to really look for the right things and put out the right job description so you get the right candidates?
Man, it can be challenging for different orgs. Some organizations will have recruiters that really understand cyber and some don't. So it varies by organization. For those of you that don't have an HR or talent acquisition team that may understand security much, it's going to take your time and effort to work with them. You have to work with them. Sometimes write your own job description. I do that for for this deputy CISO, for example. I will be writing the job description. And here's my other advice. Be as creative as possible. Don't do the template cookie cutter cut and paste from ChatGPT of here's a job description for a deputy CISO role. Make it fun. Make it creative. Think creative writing class back in high school or college. Have fun with it. Make it so that someone reads that and it's not the other 95 out of 100 job descriptions they've read. Do you want to work for a fun and engaging team? Do you hate coffee? Not for you. Do you like coffee? For you. Funny stuff, something cool that grabs them and gives a little bit of the character of you and your team. And a little bit, if you can, figure out in that description of what your team culture is about, because that'll also help attract talent to what you're looking for. And people that, ask for that. Ask for, hey, when's the last time you gave a speech, or when's the last time you've been in front of people? Then this is your job, and that'll help filter that as well. But be creative and outgoing, I think, in your job description, and write it, write it yourself or write it with HR's help and have a lot of say and input into it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You have to write your own job descriptions. I mean, if you're not doing that, how are you ever thinking you're going to source the people that you really want for the role, right? If you're outsourcing that to somebody else, you're going to get what they want, not what you want. So yeah, I think that's a really critical thing.
Yeah, and write the post. I mean, and you have to, in today's, what is it, 1 million cybersecurity positions open in 2023, and we only have 400,000 trained professionals for those million roles. So it's a fight to find that talent. It's a 2-to-1 almost ratio for me to find someone talented. So I want as much lure and as much draw as I can get from my positions.
And if you're collaborating with your HR team, it's going to be a win-win ultimately anyway, because the more and more you work with them, the more they're going to understand your hiring practices, your culture, your way of hiring folks, and they'll adapt the way they write. Then you can start trusting them more to help you build job descriptions because you'll have taught them the way of your cybersecurity culture. So I think it's a win-win. Now you're educating the HR team on your needs and what the team needs.
Yeah, three things that I tell my TA teams are what I hire for talent, not skill set. I hire for fit, not knowledge, and I hire for drive and purpose, not experience.
I love it.
Sounds a little like aptitude and attitude to me, Jason.
Attitude and aptitude. That's how I hire.
Was I snarky? Was that attitude? Oh, different kind of attitude. You're talking about something.
No, but I think you bring up a really good point, Jason, is understanding what you're looking for. And I would not underestimate the cultural aspects. People have to fit into the culture of the organization, right? And I think one of the things with writing your own job descriptions, kind of getting your kind of spin on it will actually help people understand the culture that they're also coming into, because everybody kind of fits a little differently in different cultures. Some like the more fun, some like the more serious. There is a cultural aspect to hiring the right person here, and I don't want to underestimate that, because I think that sometimes creates a challenge in the hiring process as well, is you mask out like what the organization's like, and you don't understand it and you don't get into it until you get into the interview process, maybe. And worst case scenario, it's after you get there, which would be just a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You know, I'm known to have a pretty good sense of humor at my companies, and my writing style and the way that I present cybersecurity, I make it fun and engaging. But I'll tell you, I've never had an interview where I've talked about that. It's never come up. It's never been like, hey, can I share with you my last newsletter and why this is so important for security? It's always been very serious conversations about security and security programs. So I don't know. In my opinion, you got to have both. You know, you're going to be successful and you're going to make a good name for yourself, but it may not necessarily get you the job in today's world when they're interviewing you.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, Jason, Ben, on my side, any additional questions? I have one last one for Jason before we depart, but I want to make sure you guys get one more opportunity to ask Jason any question.
Good to go on my side.
Yeah, no, fire away, Matt.
So Jason, as I'm sitting here, and let's say I'm a CISO, or I aspire to be a CISO sitting on the other side. You gave some great recommendations and tips on how to get more comfortable presenting and communicating, because I think it's a very important skill set. What are the other resources people should be looking to help them get some of the other soft skills, leadership skills that they need to either get hired in the position or who aspire to want to get hired into the position? Where would you point them? What are some of those other resources?
Yeah, I'll give 4 books and then one person to follow, watch his TED Talks or podcasts, anything he's on, which I kind of name dropped him earlier today. But I would start with a book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. It's about organizational change. In fact, my podcast, you see this, where am I pointing here? I have this little elephant on a logo, and it's all came from this book. It's this idea of how to implement change in an organization. And it really the book speaks to this concept of a rider, a path, and an elephant. And the elephant represents human emotion. And in cybersecurity, we never tend to factor that in. We go just for the logic, the spreadsheets, and the data. I'd start with Switch. I'd use as a framework for any team building conversation when you're working with your team, a framework called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by a guy named Patrick Lencioni. Read it. It's easy read. It's like it's 100 pages. It's a story too. It's not a boring, hey, what color is your parachute thing? Or, it's great. Another great book is called Drive by Daniel Pink. And it talks about what really motivates teams and employees. And then second to last, Extreme Ownership, which is a book about how Navy SEALs lead. It's amazing. It's awesome. And it's almost every chapter is a case study because it's some new story about how, and just gives you this idea about a CISO. You're ultimately responsible at the end of the day. And lastly, anything, I name dropped him earlier, anything by Simon Sinek. Guy's a genius, or at least he knows how to tell the story really well and simple so we all understand it.
Jocko is one of Jason's favorites. Simon is one of mine, The Golden Circle. Yes. Yeah, if you haven't seen, go watch that today. It's like a 3-minute TED Talk, The Golden Circle, the why. What is your why? The why. Exactly right. I mean, it's so foundational. Like, what is the why? And when you start to understand it and you put things into that context, it's so much easier to tell a story. It really is.
And I'm telling you, that why ties into everything that I just talked about. It ties into the book Drive, and it ties into Switch. That's the elephant. What you're doing by the why is moving that human connection, the emotional connection you have. He's not giving you a spreadsheet or the what we're building or how we're building it. It's why are you doing it? That gets you at the heart. And that's literally the leadership is going to be all right. I don't even know which one my heart is. Yeah, it's this one right here. Like, that's what's going to make you a great leader. And you need to focus on this part with your team and your organization.
Yeah. Those are great reads, by the way, for all kinds of leadership positions, not just CISOs. I mean, I love Simon for educating the CMO on why we market the way we market and what we should be marketing. Like, they're so all these references are so applicable to any leadership position, for sure.
Yeah, there's no magic cybersecurity leader book. There isn't. There's nothing out there. It is this, and this goes across all teams and all leadership. And if you think you're like, oh, security is too hard, let me tell you, the 4th book was about Navy SEALs. We do not have it as hard as Navy SEAls have it. So if they can do it and it's important to them, trust me, it should be important for you.
That's a great book, and it's I listened to it on Audible. Big fan of Jocko, and I suggest do the Audible if you don't have time. Listen to it in the car. It's well worth it.
Yeah. And after you read Extreme Ownership, read the Leadership Strategy and Tactics awesome to kind of put it together and then give you some good strategies and tactics to be able to execute.
And then go play paintball and role play a little bit.
Yeah.
Pretend.
Oh, Jason, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And with that, we're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.